Lesson 47, Pivot Gotchas. In this lesson, we'll take a look at three frustrating things with pivot tables. Why Excel gives us blanks instead of zeros in the heart of the pivot table, the fact that we have to refresh the pivot table when the underlying data changes, and the fact that we cannot move or change items in a pivot table. Well, here we have a pivot table, and let me add an additional field in, the product field, as an additional row item. And the first thing you'll notice is that here, there's certain values that are blank instead of zero. Frankly, this drives me crazy. This should be a numeric field. We should have zeros in there. What that's saying is that this customer did not buy any ABC from the central region. There's an easy way to replace those blanks with zeros. It's in the Options dialog box. Now, a couple of choices. You can go to Pivot Table Tools, Options, go to the Pivot Table drop-down, choose Options, and then Options. Here on the first tab, Layout and Format, there's a couple of settings, and we'll have for empty cells, show 0. Click OK. Now, whenever Microsoft says that they streamlined and improved the interface, and I have to write that you have to go to the Options tab, choose the drop-down, choose Options, and then choose Options, I can't believe that this is any more streamlined than what we used to have. In fact, the fast way is just to right-click in the pivot table and choose Pivot Table Options, and we'll get to the exact same box. Okay, now I'm going to remove some fields. I'll take the customer field off, so we have products down the side, regions across the top, and you notice that we're a $6.7 million company. Normally in Excel, if we change the underlying data, all of the workbook recalculates. However, there's something different going on with a pivot table. The reason that a pivot table is so fast is that Microsoft takes the original data from the worksheet and makes a pivot table cache, C-A-C-H-E, in memory. So, when we are pivoting fields around the pivot table, we're not using the original data, we're using a copy of the original data. Let me come here to the pivot table sheet, and I'm going to take that first revenue number, the 23,690, and replace it with a million. And go back to the pivot table. Now we were 6.7 million a minute ago, and we're still 6.7 million. Excel does not recalculate the pivot table. If you've changed the underlying data, you need to go to the Pivot Table Tools Options tab and click the Refresh button. Refresh will force Excel to go back to the original data sheet, pull that data, create a new cache, and redraw the pivot table from the cache. Just be aware of this, that normally you change the cell and everything automatically recalculates. With pivot tables, you have to click the Refresh button. I do give Microsoft credit for using the Internet Explorer refresh button here. In the past, it was always a red exclamation point, which no one could ever seem to figure out how to refresh. Now, one other frustrating item that we have is that I'm not allowed to insert rows or columns in a pivot table. If I would use Insert Sheet Columns, I get this message, which I've probably seen 10,000 times in my life. You cannot move a part of a pivot table or insert worksheet cells, rows, or columns inside a pivot table report. They do this because they need to have control over the pivot table. As you'll see in subsequent lessons, there's many cool things we can do to this pivot table, but they don't want us inserting rows or anything like that. Well, I have a very simple solution for this. In fact, just about every pivot table that I ever create lives as a pivot table for less than a minute. And then I copy the pivot table and paste values to another location, so that way I have the summary data and I can do whatever I need to do with the summary data. So we use the copy command, select an area outside of the pivot table, and choose paste values. Now I'm free to do whatever I need to do. Down here I can insert a row or insert columns or do whatever I need to do. That's not to say that pivot tables aren't valuable. They're an incredibly powerful means to an end. It gets me the summary data, so that way I can then copy and paste values and present it however I need to present it. Well, there's three important gotchas. The first gotcha is filling in the zeros in the heart of the pivot table. The second really important one is understanding that when we change the underlying data in the pivot table, we definitely need to press the refresh button in order to get the pivot table refreshed. And then finally, once you're done arranging the pivot table, you can copy and paste values to a new location so that way you can apply whatever formatting or extra rows or columns you need to do. Well, I hope you found that helpful, and thanks for watching.
Looking to advance your career by acquiring new skills? Tired of expensive off-site training programs? Wish you could learn from the best instructors in the industry? Look no further than Live Lessons. Self-paced, personal video instruction by the world's leading technology publishers. Each live lesson comes with a DVD featuring 3 to 4 hours of instructor-led classroom training, sample program code that allows you to work along with your personal instructor, and an example-rich study guide. Live lessons allow you to watch the entire course from start to finish, or navigate directly to any of the individual lessons. You'll literally watch over the shoulder of your instructor as he shows you how to build state-of-the-art applications. Live Lessons, the power of the world's leading technology experts at your fingertips. To learn more, visit mylivelessons.com today.